activity 54 and a little bit more about slavery in the United States, and I just want to again emphasize that slavery is a great evil. It is very sad and tragic that this is part of American history. I also want to emphasize some things that early Americans did do against slavery. I think it's important to remind ourselves that at the time of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, there was slavery in every single state. It was legal in every state, and there were slaves in every state, as far as I know. And then notice by the time of the Civil War in early 1860s, half the United States is free, half is not. And so I just want to emphasize that in half of the states there was not slavery. And you can see that following the Declaration of Independence, and I think partly because of, at least partly because of the principles in the Declaration of Independence, you see 8 northern states abolishing slavery between 1777 and 1804, either gradually or immediately. Back in New York, where I'm from, my parents live around the corner from the John Jay House. I've seen a little museum exhibit that talks about the role of John Jay. He was one of the authors of the Federalist Papers, Supreme Court Justice, later governor of the state of New York. How influential he was in the abolition of slavery in New York, and it was not easy to abolish slavery in the state of New York. I think there's kind of a bad quality of human beings where if we can get somebody to do our hard work for us, we will, and that's just not Southern people, but Northern people too. If you can get someone to do all your laundry and all of your cooking, etc., and not pay them for it, that's something people unfortunately are willing to do. But in the state of New York and others, they abolished slavery in that period immediately following the Declaration. And even in southern states, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, made it easier for owners to emancipate slaves. So that wish of Jefferson's in the 1760s and 1770s was achieved. And in Delaware and Maryland, you have a significant number of free African Americans. Also, the federal government passed the Northwest Ordinance in 1787, so you see this whole big area that was off limits to slavery, precisely because I believe people understood that that slavery was inconsistent with the principles of the Declaration on which the United States was based. So that's the future states of Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin. 5 states were free as a result of that federal law. The letter B, I think, is important because John Jay is putting the focus on the Declaration of Independence. Prior to the Great Revolution, he says, people were so accustomed to slavery they didn't even think a lot about the morality of it or the lack thereof. But then the Declaration seems to be a turning point where you have these principles of equality, that all men are created equal, etc. And I think people began to realize gradually, or so says John Jay, that slavery is just wrong. That there's a few people who said that, and then he compares this to the little lump of leaven which was put into 3 measures of meal, so it spreads throughout the dough. And so more and more people began to realize that slavery was wrong, and he believes that there will be an end to slavery if you just let the natural operations of truth have effect on people. And you notice he was writing to the president of the English Society for promoting the abolition of slavery. Letter C, I put letter C and D in here just because this was something that did surprise me. I don't know if this is surprising to you, but that I first heard about this at a Richland big event, big commencement, and then I pursued it further. And if you look at slavery as a whole, moving from Africa to this part of the world, most of the slaves went to the Caribbean and South America, 95%. Less than 4% had as their final destination North America. And I guess as someone growing up in the schools in the United States, in New York, I didn't get that perspective at all. It was taught to me almost as if slavery was a purely American phenomenon. And as I say, I don't discount how evil that institution was, but maybe just to get some perspective, maybe there should also be some focus on the fact that 95% of all slaves went to these other places, the Caribbean and South America, and we should, if we're going to condemn the United States for the 4%, we should also condemn even more strongly, I would say, the slavery that existed in the Caribbean and South America. Something similar is said in letter D. Lots of slaves apparently went to Brazil. Also, I noticed at the end there that the population of slaves in the United States grew at a higher rate than it did in these other regions, which is the reason for this very significant African American population we have today, which is second only to Brazil. And I'm not sure what the cause of that is. I think that I'm not a good enough student of this. I wonder if, even though, by definition, you're harming somebody by having a slave, perhaps the conditions were more tolerable in the United States. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but that's something just worth thinking about. Also, in terms of perspective, I don't know if I put this in the assignments, but it's in the textbook. Just Thomas Sowell points out that, again, if you want perspective, more Europeans were enslaved and taken to North Africa by Barbary Coast pirates than African slaves were taken to the United States and to the colonies from which it was formed. So I guess I want to see some fairness in the distribution of blame here. If we're going to blame the United States for slavery, let's blame everybody who's owning slaves and taking them captive, including the Barbary Coast pirates who took lots of Europeans here. So slavery is evil, and we should condemn it wherever it exists.